It's the GamerSupps thought of the day. I'm going to be drinking today the delicious Guacamole Gamer Fart 9000. It's actually a silly or irreverent name for strawberry and lime, one of my classics I've always enjoyed. Did you know they also have GamerSupps tea? Obviously, they've intentionally made the logo look like some cleavage, haven't they, to be edgy for you gamers. We all know how you work and the things you're into. They've got all sorts of flavours. They've got a yerba mate, boosts your energy levels. They've got a black tea, which is just a classic, isn't it? They've got the sleepy time one, where it's got L-theanine in and no caffeine in. And they've got a ginger turmeric, which gives you like a little bit of spiciness if you want a bit of zest in your day. Also, they've got shakers, t-shirts, all sorts. Get 10% off anything on the store with the code Thorin, Thorin, at GamerSupps.gg. Now, you might have seen in the plains, Furia almost failed yet again to get through a Cologne, or for that matter, a Katowice, plains. They've notoriously been knocked out many times at that stage. And so when they got through on a knife's edge, by the way, on the third map against Heroic, who obviously had Dexter arrive late, when they won the match, Fallen stood up and did that thing where he pulls his pocket out as if to imply, you're in my pocket, as a bit of like trash talk, play up to the camera, etc. Now, what's funny is there's two ways I could go on this one. I could just go on the one of being totally serious and be like, you barely even got through the game, like you didn't own them, they're not in your pocket, like who's in your pocket, you're losing all the tournaments, you've never done any major placing, the best placing ever was some lad in Finland, none of you could even tell me the top 4 teams at. Like, I could do that whole thing, but actually, I'll just say this at the outset. I understand what he's doing. One thing I love about the old school Counter-Strike pros is they know how to play up to the camera. The second they see that little light go red, they do a little move. They bring something out. In doing so, didn't he add a bit of spice onto the victory? Yeah, of course, it was insanely close. But he's playing the villain. It's the heel aspect, isn't it? It's a banter angle, and I can appreciate that. Like, obviously, one of my favourite UFC fighters of all time was not Conor McGregor, it was Chael Sonnen. And the best thing about Chael Sonnen was, if you actually beat him, he'd still find a way to be like, I basically won that game anyway. And then if he actually beat you, but by a tiny margin, he'd be like, I dominated him, he never could have won. You know, there was a million miles between. That's just funny because you're not trying to actually be dishonest. You're playing up the WWE persona and being a heel. So the fans, oh, what the hell, boo, that's not fair. That's what he's trying to do to you. So actually, I thought it was great showmanship in that sense. Now, I will say, it is mental in the context of where his career is at, because it isn't just Furia, guys. That was almost, remember, he's like 1 or 2 rounds away from being eliminated in the plains. That was almost his 5th straight IEM Katowice or Cologne plane elimination. And if you knew what his salary was all those years, that's insane. Like, you guys love to go in on Evil Geniuses or Team Liquid players when you think they've got a big salary. Or Nexa on G2, by the way, didn't even have a big salary. Skulls didn't even have a big salary. But you love to go in on these players thinking they make loads of money. I've noticed you never keep that energy for Fallen, do you? By the way, you know he won this tournament, what? In 2017, like 7 years ago, guys. This is ridiculous. So then he had I'll also actually clarify something quickly. He did then say in the interview with Banks, he said, I think the Furia guys have never gone through the Cologne playoffs, so I think we broke a curse. Now, he just means play-ins. Like, the problem is they were never in Cologne tournaments in that sense. So he meant play-ins. Like, even the first one, like, yeah, the first one, I guess, would be the one where it was just the one in a studio, and they were in the tournament. They were like 9th to 12th or whatever, but they didn't make the playoffs. He's not meaning he thinks they're in the playoffs because they won that match. You've got to understand, when people have second language English, you've got to give them a little bit of room in that regard. But it is insane that Furia, during that whole time, was never getting through the Cologne plains. Like, that's bonkers, especially because, like, think about this. In 2022, they were actually a pretty good team, like a very strong dark horse. There's a reason why they almost made the major final in Rio later that year, right? Then you think of Keserato's level last year and how insanely good he was. He was like a top 5 rifler easily, maybe top 3. He was unbelievably good. So it is kind of whack for the Furia org and where Brazilian CS has gone in that sense. So it's just a bit of banter. I actually thought it wasn't too bad. He didn't obviously own people. He's had the odd good game. By the way, a quick thing. For people who don't understand CS, you've got to stop overreacting to one map. Of course, someone like Fallen can occasionally top frag. That doesn't mean he isn't washed. What means he's washed is he can only top frag, 1 out of every 8 or 12 times or something. The point is, in his prime, he could have done that like 5 out of every 8 or 10. I mean, obviously, it's tricky because when you say that, like, obviously, he had Cold Zero and first, he wouldn't technically be top frag. We just mean have a really good game, don't we? So, actually, I thought it was somewhat in pocket, his banter. Obviously, if you enjoyed this, check out some GamerSupps. Get 10% off yourself with the code Thorin, Thorin, at GamerSupps.gg.